All right, there we go. Sorry for the delay, everybody. I lost track of time. I was in the middle of a lesson and lost track of time there. So thanks everyone for joining me. Uh, we'll go ahead and get started here. If you got your questions, you can post them. It should be below the video. If you're on a smaller screen, like a phone, if you're on a larger screen, like a computer, it should be to the right of the video. Also, want to mention that you can ask your question at any time, 24/7, and it will be answered during the next live office hours. I do recommend that you are present live to see the answer to your question, just in case you have a follow-up question or if I have a follow-up question for you. So that way your question gets answered the best way possible. But you may not be able to make it, and that's okay. Hopefully you're out playing some golf or something like that. If that's the case, you can still see the answer to your question. You just have to go to the office hours archive to see it. So today we're going from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern time. That's when we'll sign off. Shortly after we sign off today, this office hours will be put into the office hours archive, and you can access that archive by clicking the green button below the video here. So awesome. So let's do that. Lastly, I wanted to mention I do offer online lessons. I would love to have the opportunity to work with any of you. We use an app called OnForm. Very, very cool app, easy to use. You normally would have to pay to use the app, but if you sign up for the online lessons, it is free. You do not have to pay to use it. You will get to use the app for free, and we communicate through the app. You're going to send your videos through the app. I oftentimes will create a custom drill that is specific to the issues that you are having, and I will video myself doing the drill for you to kind of show you how it works. And then you do that drill, you get better, and we keep chugging along, we keep moving along. So would love to have the opportunity to work with you if you're interested in that. Also, if you have any questions about the online lessons, ask away. I'll be happy to answer any questions about it. But if you're interested, you can click the link. It should be, if you're watching this live, it should be above the video here. If you're not watching it live, you're watching it after the fact. Somewhere on the page in the archive, I believe there's a link. If there isn't, just go to the instruction tab, then go to the I don't know why it's not working. Go to the instruction tab and then go to the online lessons. Also, want to mention the online, it's unlimited. So it's not like one a week. If you're practicing a lot, you can send in multiple times a week. We just want to keep the process going. Like I send you a video, or you send me a video, I send you a lesson. You work on the lesson, you send videos, we go through that process. What we don't want to do is you send a video and then I haven't given you a lesson yet, send more videos, because it'll kind of throw things off. So that's the only thing we got to do there. All right, so let's go ahead and get into it here. So Richard G says, hi Q, I have a question about the release. When I start my downswing in the thumbs up position, do I purposely try for thumbs down, or will the momentum of the club achieve it? If I purposely try to get into that position as the club swings down, it seems that I would have to time it right, or else I would not have any consistency. Therefore, it seems that the momentum of the club head will get into the thumbs down position. Well, the momentum is definitely going to play a role there. So I get questions like this somewhat frequently. I would say once every other week, I'll probably get a question like this in the office hours, where it's kind of framed like what you're saying. Am I purposely doing this? Am I actively doing it? Am I consciously doing it? Am I intentionally doing it? And really what it comes down to, really the answer to all of these questions are if you look at your swing and you are naturally doing what you are trying to do, then there isn't really any conscious thought that needs to go into it, right? But if you want it to be different, then there has to be some sort of conscious thought. So here's what I would say. If you're talking about, are you intentionally doing this? Well, if you go up to the top of the swing and then you go like this all the way down and you keep the thumbs up, right? Well, yeah, there probably needs to be some intention to do that because we got to get that club to the ball, right? That's very rare, but that would be a situation where I'd be like, yeah, you're going to need to have some because it needs to change. I'm going to need to consciously do something different. I'm going to need to purposely do something different. Now, if you look at your swing and you're releasing it and it's everything's happening and there's no conscious thought of you doing that, then you don't need to do it. You're automatically doing it. You're unconsciously doing it, right? So that's really what it comes down to. And that's anything. That's anything in the golf swing. That's not the release. That's anything that's happening in the golf swing or anything. Not just golf, right? If you're if you're playing a different sport and what you're doing naturally isn't what you want to do, you're going to need to consciously do something different. And if you are wondering, do I need to consciously do something? But then you look on video and you are unconsciously, doing that, then you don't need to consciously do it because you're already doing it. So that's the way I would look at it. All right. So Guffron says, what will be the ideal finish position? What is a good follow through? So for a standard shot, now this isn't a one size fits all. There are players that have different, kind of finishes. Some of this depends on flexibility, shoulder flexibility, hip flexibility, ankle flexibility, all that stuff. Some of that is incorporated, but generally speaking, what I like to see is almost all of the weight on the lead side. So basically, you're all the way up on the toes of your trail foot, and your foot is pretty vertical here, but you're all the way up on the toes. The knee is kind of coming in toward your lead knee, right? And almost all of your weight is on your lead foot. The only reason why there'd be any weight in your trail foot is just the weight of your foot, right? That's it. But pretty much everything is on that lead side. I like to see the hips basically pointing toward the target. The chest will typically be a little bit to the left of the target of that for a right-handed golfer. And then as far as the finish with the arms, generally speaking, the arms kind of go all the way around to the back, and then you'll see the shaft here. You'll see it kind of going through my ear holes, right? That's basically, that's kind of like a textbook kind of finish. But if you kind of come in and you're like this, that's not bad either, right? There are plenty of great golfers that are kind of more like this. I think Clay is more like this, right? Where it's kind of, it's not through the ear holes. It's kind of more like that. And also, Tommy Fleetwood, right? When he hits his irons, he's like this, right? Some of it depends on the shot that you're hitting, right? So if you're hitting like a lower shot, you'll typically have a shorter finish, kind of like this. And if you're hitting a higher shot, you might be kind of hoisting it up and you might have a much higher chest. It might be kind of more angled away, right? So a lot of it depends on the shot that you are hitting as well. But generally speaking, we want to have all that weight on the lead side. I would say that's everybody. There aren't too many shots where you want to kind of be on your back foot. Pretty much every single shot, you're going to be on that lead side, right? We want to get the body rotated through, so hips pointing toward the target. Now, there's some players that are very flexible that might be able to get their hips pointing left of the target and their chest pointing way left of the target, right? So a lot of it depends on, on flexibility, but generally speaking, hips toward the target, chest a little left of that, and then the club kind of going through, right through there. If you're having trouble getting into a good finish, a lot of times it's a weight shift issue. So we're kind of hanging back. So if you're struggling with weight shift, the step drill is by far the best drill you can do for that. So basically what you do is you start with your feet together, you shift to your trail side, you throw the club back. As you throw the club back, you step forward. You want to kind of time the top of the swing with landing on that lead foot. Once we feel that pressure in that lead foot, we're going to push from the ground, come all the way, start that downswing from there. And then that gets your momentum moving to the lead side. So that way, you're getting a good weight shift there. So And then I would just try to translate that to a normal swing. So I just take a normal swing, practice swing. I want to replicate those same feels, and then come all the way around into a full finish there. So, yeah, that would be one. Trying to think. Another good finish drill is just a hold it, right? So if you're struggling with coming around into a good finish, what I would do is I'd hit some shots where you are holding it for 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. Hold it for three long seconds there, and that will help you to kind of feel that finish a lot better. So those would be the things I'd recommend doing if you're struggling with the finish there. All right, let's keep the questions coming. We got plenty of time left here. If we got any more questions, no big deal if we don't, but might be a little boring if we don't have any more questions, but that's okay. So yeah, keep them coming if you got them. If not, no big deal at all. Let's see here. All right, let's see here. So here's a good one. Why are you not improving? All right. So a lot of times the reason why I see a lot of people not improving is because they're focused on what I would call playing golf swing instead of playing golf. All right. And understanding exactly what we need to do to play good golf. So, for example, I just got done with the lesson with a student, and I asked this student. This student was kind of hitting was really hitting hooks, and you could clearly see his club path was too much into out. His club face was very closed, so basically he was swinging a lot to the right, and his face was very closed. And as a lot of golfers are worried about, we've seen the videos where on YouTube where you got to keep the hips back, right? And there's a time and a place for that drill, but it didn't really apply to what he was struggling with. But he was really worried about getting his hips open and not having his hips move away from that line. But that's not a requirement to hit a good golf shot. In fact, there are also many great high level golfers that move their backside. It's often called the tush line, in the instruction field. Where if you imagine if I were to draw a vertical line, that'd be up against my backside here. Like if my hips are moving away from that line, that'd be moving away from the tush line. Well, that's happening in his swing, and there are many great players. That Jack Nicklaus does that. Roy McIlroy does that. Jimmy Walker, Zach Johnson. I mean, there's a lot of golfers that have won major championships. I just named 4 that have won multiple major championships that move their hips off the line. So that just proves like it's not a swing fundamental. That's really a big reason why it's not a part of the top speed golf system is because it doesn't. There are some situations where I would maybe give that to a student, but not in every situation. If I see a student whose backside's moving off the line, I honestly most of the time I don't mess with it unless it is clearly creating a problem with their ball flight or contact. So one instance would be maybe a heel strike. So if it's really excessive and someone's hitting the ball off the heel or shanking the ball, then it would be like, okay, we don't have to necessarily keep our hips on this line, but if we can reduce how much we're moving the body toward the ball, it may make it a lot easier to hit the ball in the middle of the face. But that wasn't really something he was struggling with. Another thing that he mentioned was that he felt he was casting. Well, he wasn't casting. He was early releasing. He was actually creating some great lag in the beginning of the downswing, but he did have a little bit of an early release at the bottom. Again, you can hit good golf shots with an early release as long as it's not excessive, right? As long as you have some shaft lean, meaning at impact your hands are ahead of the ball some amount, even if it's like this. If I take the ball here, and let's say that my impact position looks like this, well, my hands are still ahead of the ball a little bit, right? Not much. My shaft is leaning forward. So as long as my shaft is leaning forward some amount at impact, I can hit good golf shots. And if you think about it, it's really about the geometry of what's going on, right? So if we're coming in and let's say we have backwards shaft lean, well, that means that my club, if you think about the geometry of what's going on, right? My club's working down, working down, working down, working down. It reaches a bottom, then it starts to work back up. Well, when my club starts to work, if I hold this at a fixed point and my club starts to work back up, well, that means I'm hitting the ball on the upswing if I have backward shaft. Well, if my ball is on the ground, I can't really hit the ball on the upswing because the ground's in the way. So that's when it's a problem, right? But if that's not a problem, and also it's not so much about it may not be so much about getting the club to release later. It's really just about getting the hands more ahead of the ball. Now that can be done through the release, but it's typically when I see that when someone has backward shaft lean, it's usually because they're hanging back and they're trying to help the ball up in the air or they're trying to get the face closed. So if we just get the body more forward, well, look, I can come into impact if I'm like this, and then I get my body more forward. And let's say I move the ball position back. Well, now all of a sudden my hands are forward, right? And I can hit good golf shots. So I forgot where I was going with that. Oh yeah. So he was kind of getting distracted by things that aren't required to hit good golf shots. Now he desperately wants to hit good golf shots, but we're getting distracted by things. And this is really kind of, YouTube is kind of responsible for this. Social media is kind of responsible for this because everyone's trying to make content. We make content and stuff like that. But, what we have to realize is with a lot of these videos, a lot of the time it's for a specific person that is struggling with that issue, right? And a lot of times it's just about, okay, this is ideal. It's okay to not be, but this might be ideal. Typically it'd be more ideal to have your hands a little bit more forward at impact, depending on how forward they are to begin with. But you gotta think about it. If your goal is to play good golf, really what we need to have happen is we need to have ball first contact. We need to have center face contact. We need to have a square club face. We have to have a fairly neutral swing plane down to the ball, club path, right? And then we need to have a little bit of speed behind that. If we can have those things, we can play great golf. And you can have all of those things while casting, while early extending, moving your hips away from the tush line, while doing all kinds of things. You can hit good golf shots. So what I would say is, how about we get to where we can hit great golf shots, right? Because that's going to be way more fun anyway when you're getting great results from the changes that you're making. Because a lot of those things are very difficult to change. It's very difficult to change the way you release the club, as far as earlier or later. It's very, very difficult to change. And the reason is that it's happening at the fastest point in the golf swing. And it's also the way you release the club has a high influence on all those things that I talked about that need to happen at impact to hit good golf shots. Has a high influence on all of those things. So trying to coordinate a change and then also coordinate all those things at the same time, it's very difficult to do. And most people really aren't willing to do what it takes to change that. It's kind of like, I would equate it to like the person that wants like a six pack, right? But also wants to drink as much beer as they want, eat as much beer, or drink as much beer and eat as much ice cream and pizza that they want. Those things aren't going to go together. You kind of have to make sacrifices in order to make that happen. So it's kind of a lot of people, and it's to no fault of their own. Nobody thinks about this stuff, and nobody really talks about it because no one really wants to hear it. You know what I mean? Nobody wants to hear like, hey, it's going to take you, if you worked really, really hard, it's probably going to take you a year to be comfortable with getting a release like a pro. If you're coming into impact, if your impact position right now is this, it's probably going to take a long time for you to, because it takes time to do the reps and make it second nature and all that stuff. The reason why you don't hear anybody talking about it is because it's you're talking about something like, let's say I'm trying to convince you to work with me, and I say, hey, it's going to take a year, for you to get what you want. Well, shoot, I'm going to go to the guy that tells me I can do it in 5 minutes. They're lying to you, but that's what you're going to, that's what you're going to do. Right. I would do the same thing. So that's why nobody really talks about it, because, that's why in the top speed golf system, Clay's asking you to do thousands of reps, especially with like the release and stuff like that, because I mean, a lot of times that's what it takes to make the change. And that a lot of times that's probably not even enough. It's not like you do the 1,000 reps and then boom, you got it. After 999, you don't have it, then number 1,000, now you've got it. It's not really like that. It's kind of an estimate of like, okay, you're going to need to do a lot of reps. Let's just say, hey, 1,000, 3,000 reps, whatever it is on there. I know some of them say 1,000, some of them say 3,000. Well, we're just trying to put the message across. So like, hey, you're going to need to do a lot of reps. It's not going to happen in one range session, right? Now, some people are already doing these things automatically without conscious thought, and they're not going to need to put in the reps because it would be redundant. But, that is what it is. So, like I said, a lot of the reason why a lot of people are not improving is because they're focused on trying to get their swing to look a certain way, just based on YouTube videos or whatever it might be, or things that they feel are swing thoughts, but often swing faults, but often aren't really that big of a problem. And they don't focus on the things that really matter. So the things that really matter are ball first contact, center face contact, square club face, neutral path, and speed. So if you have the thought that, if you kind of have this rule that I'm not going to change anything in my golf swing unless it directly improves that, then I'm not going to work on it. Now, that's still not even the best way to work on it. The best way to improve is to look at what your weaknesses are. And that's what I do in the online lessons. When you sign up for the online lessons, in the OnForm app, I'm going to send you a link to basically a quiz, like questionnaire, where I get to know your golf game. And basically, we try to find your weakness through that. Now, there may be some follow-up questions that I have after the fact, but after you take it, but that's where we try to find. We try to find what your biggest issue is. So what I like to do is I like to break it down into 5 categories, right? So we have driver, we have approach, which is basically any full swing shot that you're hitting off of the ground, is your approach shots. Then we have distance wedges, which is going to be in a little different category because it's a different swing, because we're not trying to get power. We're really just trying to hit it a specific distance with the wedge. And the swing's a little different for that. So I put that in a different category. And then we have short game. So this is going to be anything that's like 30 yards and in around the green. So chip shots, short pitch shots, greenside bunker shots, that sort of thing. And then putting. Those are the 5 categories, right? So what I would want you to think about is, within those 5 categories, where do you feel you're losing the most strokes? So if you think about your biggest holes, this is an easy way to think about it. Like your blow-up holes, right? Your average golfer is going to have plenty of blow-up holes. Even your 10 handicap, your 5 handicap is going to have a blow-up hole or 2, probably, right? Or on a bad day, they might have way more than that, right? I've had my fair share of days where I had multiple doubles or even a triple in a round as a low handicap golfer. So it's, we all have those. So if you kind of look at, okay, where did things kind of get off the rails? It started here, right? It might be, I chunked that, and then this, that's what you want to look at. So you want to start picking up on the patterns, and there might be multiple things. I'm not saying that everyone just has one thing to work on. Most people have multiple things to work on. But what you want to do is you want to look at what is the number one. So in those 5 categories, what is the number one thing? And then what we do from there is we continue to peel back the onion, right? So let's say you said driver. Driver is the thing. I hook it, I slice it, I do, whatever, out of bounds, I'm topping it, whatever it might be. So let's say that is. So now let's say it's driving. So now what we're going to do is we're going to continue to peel back the onion. Well, with driver, driver is somewhat simplified in the sense that driver comes down to we can take out the ball first contact. That doesn't matter, right? Because you're hitting it off of the tee. So now it just comes down to driver comes down to where you're hitting it on the face. So your strike location, are we getting it in the sweet spot? And by the way, this is the most overlooked thing in the golf swing. I will tell you what I have learned through teaching for a while now, that most people have no clue where they're hitting it on the club face, and most people don't train hitting the ball in the middle of the face. And for that reason, I look at it as the most overlooked skill in golf, the thing that hardly anybody knows what they're doing with it, and hardly anybody works on it. And it's a key fundamental. Like if you want to be a good ball striker, really it comes down to hitting the ball in the middle of the face. Sky Scheffler does not miss the middle of the face very often. He hits it pretty darn solid. Pro golfers in general don't miss the middle of the face very often. In fact, they've done research on different handicap levels and the dispersion of their strike pattern. And if you look at like 20 handicap golfers, it was like a 3 or 4 inch wide strike pattern on the driver. Then you go down to like a 10 handicapper and it's like half that. It's 1.5, 2 inch wide. Then you go down to a scratch golfer and it's like nickel sized, right? Then you go down to the pro and it's like dime sized. So it kind of shows you like, wow, there's a very high correlation to handicap and where you're hitting the ball on the club face. So that's a lot of times that's a big one. If you're all over the place with the driver, because typically if you're hitting the ball in the middle of the face, you're typically going to have like what we call like a two-way miss, where it's a pull slice two-way miss or a hook block two-way miss. It's going to be something like that. But if it's all over the place, you hit a slice sometimes, you hit a hook, you hit a pull, you hit a block, you hit a pull slice, a pull hook, it's all kinds of different things. Usually the strike is a big part of that, because a lot of people equate the strike to or where you hit the ball in the middle of the face just to losing some distance. Like if I don't hit it solid, I'm just going to lose distance. But it's way more than that. It's actually, you're going to lose distance, but you're also going to lose accuracy, because when you don't hit the ball in the middle of the face twists. So the ball is going to start on a different line than what you intended. And then something else happens, especially in woods, called gear effect, where it puts a different spin on the ball, which will make it curve differently than what you intended. So let's say you hit a shot and you hit this shot off the toe, but at impact, your face is perfectly square and you are perfectly on plane. So what that means is, had you hit this ball in the middle of the face, the ball would have went dead straight. But let's say instead you hit it on the toe. Well, that ball is going to start, let's say you did it with the driver. That ball is going to start more to the right. It's going to start to the right of your target, and then it's going to hook most likely or overdraw due to something called gear effect. We won't get into that, what all that is, but it definitely plays a big role. So in that situation, a lot of people might think, oh, I have my face too close. And then they might make an adjustment to get the face more open. When in reality, it was really just a toe strike, and you just need to hit the ball more in the middle of the face. So, with driver, let's say driver is the thing that you want to work on. It comes down to strike location, your face angle, and your club path, and then speed. That's everything with the driver. Everything. Now you might throw in hitting up on the ball, but what I have found, well, one, this is another little known fact. Your angle of attack doesn't play as big of a role as what you think in your distance. So think about it this way. Let's say you take a golfer that swings 100 miles an hour, and they go from hitting down on the ball 2 degrees to hitting up on the ball 2 degrees. They're going to gain roughly about 6 yards. Now, 6 yards isn't nothing, but I bet you if you did a blind survey and did multiple choice, and you had no gain in distance, 6 yard gain, 15-yard gain, 25-yard gain, something like that, you're going to get a lot of people that say 25, I bet. Or I would actually have them do a free answer, because sometimes you can get influenced by the multiple choice, because a lot of times you think, oh, it's the middle answer. So if I did a free choice, like, hey, you tell me how far you think it would be, I bet you most people would be 20 plus yards. There'd be a lot of people that would say 30 plus yards, 40 yards, right? But the reality is you just don't gain that much. Now, if you swing 115 miles an hour, you're going to gain a little bit more, but it's like 8 yards, 9 yards, right? Again, not insignificant, but not enough to really try to hit up on the ball a ton, because it's just not going to help your distance that much. In fact, your average professional golfer actually hits down on the ball 1 degree. Now, a lot of people are surprised by that, but a couple things to consider here. So one is that 1 degree is a very small amount, right? So you think about like 1 minute on a clock, that's 6 degrees, a whole minute. So we're talking like a sliver of a minute. So really, they're coming in very, very level on the ball. So pretty level. And then also if you're a high club head speed player, like a professional golfer is, when you hit up on the ball and you hit the ball on a higher launch, if you hit it on a very high launch with a lot of speed, you hit the ball very, very high. And it's much more difficult to control when you hit the ball super high. A lot of players high-level players don't really like to see the ball get way above the trees. Because let's say you hit a wild one, well, that ball is going up over the trees and landing maybe into the trees. Whereas if you keep it lower, you swing more level, you keep it lower, you have a lower launch, that ball doesn't getting above the trees. Well, if I hit a wild one, it might hit the side of the trees and bounce out. Or at least it's going to hit the side of the trees, and it may not go in very far. And I'll not only is it going to be easier to control, but also your wild ones are going to be more manageable if you happen to hit them into trees, because you're more likely to get lucky. It is really, really what it comes down to. So, and it just doesn't play that huge of a role in your distance. What's really going to mess with your distance is your strike and your club head speed, the quality of your strike and your club head speed. And then also the amount of curve. If you're putting a lot of curve on the ball, you got a big slice. Even if you're hitting it really solid and you got a lot of club head speed, you're definitely losing some distance from the amount of curve that's going on that ball, because it increases your spin. And especially if you're hitting into the wind gets a hold of it, just makes it more difficult. So anyway, we want to hit the ball pretty straight. We don't want to hit way up on it. So you could say angle of attack. You could throw that in there for driver, but typically what I have found, the people that are way off with their angle of attack, like hitting too much down on the ball, it's usually because they're coming down very steep. So if you imagine, if I'm coming down like this, I'm going to hit more down on it. So typically, if we just get the club plane, right, our club path, to be on a much better path, well, that automatically gets your angle of attack in a better spot. So like I said, I very rarely work on angle of attack. The only time I can typically have a student that would work on angle of attack is if they want to hit the ball higher, and then they're doing things in their swing that are making them like, for example, I had a guy last year that basically his impact position with the driver is like this. So his body was really far forward like this, and he was really hitting down on the ball and hitting low lasers. And, told him to widen up. And when he shifts to that lead side, push away from it to stay behind, put a stick, right here. So that way he can't hit the stick. And, he started hitting more up on it and started getting some higher launching shots. And that's where that can make a difference. But generally speaking, it's just not going to make make that big of a difference. So those are really the things that you want to work on. So every lesson that I would do with the driver would be to improve those things. The strike location, the direction the club face is pointing at impact, the direction the club is moving through impact, into out to in, and speed. That's, I would say, 99% of my driver lessons are to directly improve, those things. So that's really what you look at. You look at what's the area where you need the most improvement, where you're losing the most strokes, and then peel back the onion some more. Like, okay, well, what's actually happening there? You're hooking it, you're slicing it, whatever it might be. Let's figure out what's causing those things, because it's either it's strike, it's path, it's face, the combination of the two, or sometimes it's speed. Like we want to hit the ball farther, like we're just not hitting the ball far enough. If you're hitting your driver 150 yards and you're playing 6,500 yards, it's going to be tough, right? We need to get more speed, so that way you can hit the ball farther. So that's really what it comes down to. If you focus on that, you will get better. You have no choice. If you continue to improve your weaknesses and you identify weaknesses that actually cause you to lose strokes, so if you work on those things specifically and you make those weaknesses strengths, and then you keep knocking out each weakness to make it a strength, you honestly have no choice but to get better, assuming that everything else stays the same, right? That we're not, because that's the thing too, is when you're working on something, it's in addition to what you're already doing, right? So if you're doing certain things to kind of maintain your level of play, and then you just stop doing those things to focus on one thing, well, those things may deteriorate a little bit, and you won't necessarily get all of, it may kind of cancel each other out. But if you continue to do those things and then also focus on that thing, the new thing that's going to help you to cut strokes down, then you have no choice but to improve it at that point. So that's what I try to do in the lessons. Everything we work on is specific to an issue, and we want to understand exactly what's going on, right? The geometry, what's going on, the physics of what's going on. And you don't have to. I try to keep it as simple as I can. And be honest with you, a lot of times you don't need to know that, but I will say that every high-level player out there that I know of has at least a basic understanding of ball flight laws. So we don't need to know every little thing, right? But if we have a basic understanding of what makes the ball do what it does in the air, what's happening at impact to cause that, then tell you what, you're leaps and bounds ahead of a lot of people. I actually saw a post recently on social media. I think it was what's his name, Mark Crossfield or something like that, I think his name is. From what I can see, really knowledgeable guy, great instructor. He's been doing it for a long time, been on YouTube for a long time doing stuff. But he actually he made a comment on the commentary on the Open, and somebody, I think somebody said that there was like topspin on a shot or something that came out of the rough, and it definitely didn't have topspin. That definitely doesn't really happen. And if you understand what's happening in impact, you would understand that. But he put a poll out there, and he said, the poll said, when you hit a shot out of the rough, does the ball have topspin or backspin, or something like that, something along those lines? And it was a poll. And at the time that I saw the post, it was 50-50 that people thought backspin and topspin. And he said at one time, topspin was winning by a lot. And what that tells me is that a lot of people just don't understand what's happening at impact. Because if you think about it this way, I don't know if any tennis people out there, or racket sport kind of people. I mean, technically they say golf is a racket sport, but like ping pong, tennis, pickleball, any of those games, what happens when you put topspin on a ball, right? The ball dives into the ground. It doesn't want to stay in the air. It wants to dive down into the ground. Now, this I've really only seen. I guess there's maybe two situations where this happens. So one would be maybe on a putt. But even on putts, a lot of times they have backspin or very small amount of backspin. But you can put topspin on a putt, and I'll explain how you can do that here in a second. You don't need to put topspin on a putt, but you can put topspin on a putt. Another situation would be like where, let's say you're hitting out of a bunker and you got a mound in front of you, and let's say you caught it thin and it hits that mound. I have seen where that's happened to me before, where I hit the ball, when I hit it, it has backspin. It absolutely has backspin. I'll explain why it has backspin here in a second. But then when it hits that mound, it changes the spin on the ball. So it hits there, and then it had top spin on it. And because the ball, like after it hit the mound, it went like that and just dove into the ground. So yeah, if a ball has backspin or topspin on it, it's not going to stay in the air. It's going to dive down into the ground. Just like when you hit a topspin forehand in tennis or ping pong or whatever. That's why they hit it, because they want it to do that, so that way it can hit on the other side of it will get over the net and then drop down quickly before it gets to the back of the baseline. They're doing that on purpose. And just like when you slice a shot, right? In tennis, if you slice a shot, you'll notice how the ball will tend to kind of float more. And again, by design to make that happen. So that's what's happening in a golf swing. The only way that a ball can have top spin off of the club face is if the direction we are swinging the club, the up and down direction, is more than the dynamic loft of the club. So that's why it can happen with a putter, because if I'm putting, typically putters will have around 4 degrees of loft, typically, but I can also do that and take away all of the loft, right? So if I have my hands, let's say I have a 4-degree loft on this driver. I think it is 4 degrees of loft. Let's say I have 4 degrees of loft, and then I lean my hands forward, and then I hit up on it. Like that putt right there would have had top spin, a little bit of top spin on it, right? So that's basically the only way, is if the direction, your angle of attack, meaning are you hitting up on it or are you hitting down on it? Your angle of attack is going to need to typically be upward, unless you have negative loft. But we got to be hitting up on it typically if we have a lofted club. And then the dynamic loft, which is the loft that we're presenting to the ball at impact, that has to be lower, right? So if I'm hitting up on the ball 6 degrees and my dynamic loft is 4 degrees, then I'm going to have what's called spin loft. I'm going to have a 2-degree spin loft. It'd actually be negative 2 degrees spin loft, which would be top spin. But pretty much every shot that you hit, probably a lot of people have probably never hit a shot with top spin in their life with a golf club. But if a ball is kind of diving, from a hook, that's close to top spin, because what's happening is the spin axis is changing. So typically if a ball kind of like dives in hooks like that, that'll happen sometimes, and that's because the spin axis is changing. So if you imagine this, right? This is the golf ball, this red ball here, and then this stick represents the spin axis. Well, if I hit a ball dead straight, that's what my spin axis is going to look like. It's going to look like that. It's going to look very level. That's going to make my ball fly very straight. Now, it's kind of like a plane, right? So if I tilt my spin axis that way, just like a plane, my ball is going to curve that way. If I tilt my spin axis that way, it's going to curve that way. Well, if I hit a big hook, the more this axis tilts, the more it's going to curve. So if I hit a big hook, that means that my axis is turning quite a bit, and it's still got backspin on it, but it's just because it's tilted this way, it's going to kind of dive that way, right? The spin axis isn't, it's still backspin, but the spin axis is not level with the ground, so it's not going to go like that. It's going to go like that, right? So it's not really top spin that you're putting on it. It's just you changed the spin axis, you tilted it so much that it's dove into the ground, and that's led to the illusion of maybe it had topspin on it. But trust me, if you put a topspin on a ball, it will dive into the ground. In fact, I don't know if you've been to like a scramble where they have like the cannons. You ever done that? Those things are pretty cool. But you ever notice how they're kind of curved upward? That's to put backspin on the ball, so that way it doesn't dive. If they were to flip that upside down and shoot it to where it was curved like that, putting topspin on the ball would just dive because it has so much speed, it would just dive into the ground. So things to consider there. But it just leads me to believe that just a lot of people have no idea what's going on at impact, and that's something that if you want to be a good golfer, I definitely recommend that you understand. Now, next question might be, well, how do I learn that? I can talk briefly since we have some time here. I talk briefly, and we don't have any more questions. Actually, we do have we don't have any new questions. Let me refresh this, make sure we got it. We don't have any new ones. Oops, make me put in the password. Sorry, I wasn't paying attention. I was just talking. Yeah, we don't have any new questions, so we're good. So yeah. But there is something out there that you can learn from, and it's very well done. If you do a Google search for TrackMan University, it's a free thing that TrackMan put together. I tell you what, it's very well done. I was very impressed by how well done it's put together. They put together several years ago, and I haven't looked at it in a while. I think they've even made upgrades to it. I think they've even kind of improved it and made it look a little bit better. But it's been around for a while. I don't know when it first came out. It's probably been at least 10 years, I would say. It's been in existence, maybe longer than that. But they teach you basic stuff. They also teach you a lot of stuff that isn't so basic as well. So basically, they bring you through, I think it's called the library, they call it, where they kind of teach you everything. And it's very well done. There's videos, there's illustrations and all kinds of stuff. You're not just like reading it. There's someone explaining it to you. It's very well done. And then you take a quiz to kind of test your knowledge. And then they give you like a medal or whatever, or like an animated medal, not like a physical medal, but they give you like an animated things, and you pass each section, right? And you learn all kinds of cool stuff as well. You learn like what effect weather has on the ball, right? Warmer weather versus cooler weather, higher humidity versus lower humidity, and things like that. Like, what does that do to the ball? Does the ball go farther? Elevation, what that does, and all that stuff. So it really, really helps you to understand that. And if you have a launch monitor that has a lot of these parameters, it helps you understand, what's going on there as well. It helps you kind of interpret the numbers, because a lot of that can be very intimidating. And really, we don't need all of it. There's a lot of data parameters, and really the ones that really matter are face angle, club path, strike location, which not all of them even tell you strike location, but strike location. None of them really measure ground contact. They do measure low point, which is where the club is bottoming out, but that's not really where you're hitting the ground. Typically, if you take a divot, your low point is going to be somewhere in the middle of that divot. So it doesn't measure ground contact relative to the ball, but which is a key thing, a key fundamental. But yeah, it does. It does measure a lot of stuff, but a lot of it is just, they got to sell a product. So it's like, hey, it tells you like 80 data parameters, and 95% of them you don't even really need to pay attention to. So yeah, it's fantastic. So let's talk real briefly about really basic ball flight laws. And I'd recommend, write this down, write it down. Not talk about, I don't know if anybody saw the movie Van Wilder, but he always told his assistant, hey, to write that down. But anyway, you're so basically everything I'm about to say is assuming you're hitting the ball in the middle of the face, and we'll talk about when you don't hit the ball in the middle of the face. But let's assume that you're hitting the ball in the middle of the face. You hit the ball in the sweet spot. Well, the ball is going to start mostly in the direction of the club face and then curve away from the club path. So the way you can look at it is if your ball is curving too much and or it's curving in the wrong direction, then you need to change the club face, the face angle relative to the club path, right? So if you're trying to hit a draw and you hit a slice, then your face is too open. You need to get the face more closed. If you're trying to hit a draw and it hooks, then the ball's curving too much. So you need to ease off on how close the face is. So if your ball is curving too much or it's curving in the wrong direction, you need to change the club face relative to the club path. Real quickly, easiest way to do that would be to strengthen or weaken the grip. Typically, if we strengthen the grip, it's a lot easier to get that club face closed. If we weaken the grip, it's a lot easier to get that face more open. All right. You can also, with the way that you're kind of releasing the club. So the way I would kind of think about it, if I want to get the face more closed, I might try to feel like I'm releasing the club, but I want to get that club face kind of angled down. If I need the face to be more open, I might feel like I'm coming through in my release and my club face is pointing to the sky. So I'm basically holding that face through contact. I recommend adjusting the grip before you try to do that because it's a lot easier to change the grip or to adjust the grip. Get yourself in the ballpark where you're missing equally on each side with the grip. So that's the first part. Now let's say, hey, my ball is curving in the direction I want. It's also curving the amount that I want, but it's too far right or too far left. Then that's your club path. Now, in the first part, when you change your club face and you get your club face lined up with the path, your path could be off too, but the first step is to get the face in line with your path. So let's say you're hitting a big hook, right? Well, your face is too close. Well, when you get the face lined up and you get to where it's not hooking, well, your ball might just go straight right, or it might just be the baby draw that you want, but it's too far right. So if your ball is curving the amount you want, and it's curving the direction you want, but it's still not going in the direction you want, it's too far right, too far left, then you need to change your club path, and your face will go with your path. All right. So what I mean by that, let's say you went through that process, right? Let's say your ball was hooking, and you weakened your grip, and now you got the ball to not to curve the amount that you want. Let's say you're trying to hit it dead straight. Well, now that you weaken your grip, the ball is going dead straight, but it's just going dead straight to the right. It's curving the amount you want. It's curving the direction you want, which is no curve. And it's just going straight to the right. Well, in that situation, now we got it. Now that club path is too much to the right. Now I need to get my club path working more to the left. So I need to feel like I'm swinging more to the left. Try to pull the ball. And the cool part about it is that your face is going to go with your path. Right? It doesn't usually work out. If we put numbers on it, let's say you were swinging 10 degrees to the right and your face was 10 degrees to the right. Well, when you swing more to the left, your face isn't going to stay 10 degrees to the right. It's going to go with your path. So if we swing more to the left, it should help you to get that strike more, or to help you get that ball flight more in the direction of the target. So very simply, that's it. You just got to remember those two things. If the ball is curving too much or it's curving in the wrong direction, we need to change the face relative to the path. If the ball is curving the amount we want and in the direction we want, but it's still too far right, too far left, then we need to change the path. Assuming all of that is assuming we hit the ball in the middle of the face. If we're not hitting the ball in the middle of the face, then we can't really equate it to that. So that means that really your first order of business is to make sure that you're hitting the ball in the middle of the face. Easiest way to do that, foot powder spray. Get yourself some of this stuff. Dr. Scholl's Odor X with Sweat Max technology. This is what I recommend that you get. Very, very easy to use. It's fairly inexpensive, $5 or $6 a can. I think I got this at Target a couple months ago. Quick tips for using this. Shake it up really good first. Make sure you give it a good shake. If you don't shake it up real good, then the powder may not come out, may spray on clear. So shake it up really, really good. And then just use a small amount. You only really need like 1 second of spraying it on the face. So that would look something like this. Again, shake it up really, really good. So it's about 1 second that I sprayed it on the face. Now, when it first sprays on there, it's not going to look super white. So that's why give it like 10 seconds, and then it will dry. And you can see it's almost fully dried. You can see how white, I don't know if you can tell, but you can see how white that is on the face. So it's very white. And now when I hit the ball, I can clearly see where I'm hitting on the face. And you can see if you have a tendency to hit it off a certain part of the face. If you're hitting on the heel, you're hitting on the toe. Because most golfers who are experienced will have a tendency to be on a certain part of the face, right? So, a lot of players will have a tendency to hit on the heel to center or toe to center. It's not usually where you're way on the toe, way on the heel for an experienced golfer. For a beginner golfer, yeah, you'll see that. You'll see it because they haven't put the reps in to be able to coordinate it very well yet. But over time, that will tighten up. But experienced golfers will typically be pretty consistent with where they're hitting on the face. They just might not be hitting it in the correct part of the face. So yeah, it would be about moving that bias toward the center part of the face and then shrinking that dispersion. So taking whatever your dispersion is currently and making sure that that's centered on the face. And then once you've got it centered on the face, then it's about shrinking that dispersion. And as I talked about earlier, the more you can shrink that dispersion, the lower that handicap will get, because your ball flight is going to be way more predictable and way more consistent. One of the things that I get told quite a bit by students is I just want to be more consistent. Well, if you want to be more consistent, focus a lot on hitting the ball in the middle of the face, because that's one thing that will make you more consistent, because it's going to make your ball flight way more predictable. Your distance is going to be more consistent and more predictable, and that's going to lead to more consistent golf, right? So yeah, that's really what it comes down to. So thanks for joining me today, everybody. Normal schedule this week. So tomorrow, Tuesday, we'll be on here 11 a.m. Eastern time. Bring your questions at that time. If anybody's interested in the online lessons, I do offer them. If you're interested and want to get down and figure out exactly what you need to do to get better specifically to you, click that button. Let's get started. Let's get to work. Let's get your game on the right track and get you working in the right direction. I love working with people, and hearing about, hey, I'm playing better golf, and I went out there, shot my best score, and all that stuff. And if we focus on the right things, and we are diligent about it, and we work hard, and we can definitely get it done. Sometimes it's not crazy working hard or anything like that. Sometimes it's just, hey, I did this drill and it really kind of helped me understand what I need to do, and then all of a sudden it kind of changed quite a bit for you. So I'd love to have that same thing happen to you. So if you're interested, sign up for the lessons. Click the link above the video here if you're watching live. If you're not watching live, go to the instruction tab and go to the online lessons from there. And let's get started. Let's get to work. All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining me. We'll be back here tomorrow, Tuesday, 11 a.m. Eastern time. Everybody have a great rest of your evening, and I'll talk to you next time.